I'm tired. For this video, I'm going to be talking about the second week in Code Crew Code School. Just like the first video, I'm going to pop up a neat little text box to kind of keep up with where I am in the video, what terms I'm using, and things like that. At the end of this video, I'm going to pop in a little programming joke. May not be funny, but it is cute, so be sure to stick around for that. So we're just going to jump right in. This week we really went to town on JavaScript, which is pretty much what we were doing last week, but we just got some new skills, learned some new things, and eventually moved straight on into Python. But first, let's talk a little bit about what we learned in JavaScript this week. The first thing that we went over was arrays, which is just kind of a way to list, organize, order data, which was really interesting and seems like something that's actually going to be like a very strong principle of programming, like for real. So a lot of the examples that we used were accessing specific information in arrays, creating, objects inside of arrays that were complicated. So maybe they had a user's name, address, and social security code, things like that. And we also went over classes, which is similar to arrays, and that allows you to kind of order objects. So after that, we moved into scope, which is less of a hardcore concept or executable thing, so much as it's just a term that relates to where in your programming, where in your code, or where in your function, or where in your nested function something can be called, basically. So within scope, we kind of understood the differences between variables, especially. So knowing when to use var, knowing when to use let, and knowing when to use const. And these are all, variables, and you say, var name equals autumn, let name equals autumn, const name equals autumn, things like that. And scope is just an understanding of knowing where you can call that variable, basically. And scope can also apply to things like functions and anything that's inside of something else, essentially. We also learned about hoisting, which is kind of the concept of where a variable or a function or whatever can be read as well. So we know that JavaScript supports hoisting. In a minute or two, Python doesn't support hoisting, so you have to keep that in mind. And that was really important because it changed the way that we were writing our code, basically. So understanding scope is vital to the way that you construct your code, essentially. We also moved to switch case, which is just a way to call a bunch of if statements, essentially, and it makes it a lot easier to run through a ton of possibilities or conditionals or whatever back to back. And we also did array manipulation, which allows you to do something to an array and save the original array and the manipulated array, separately. So we learned about .map, .filter, and .reduce. Map just allows you to do something simple to an object in an array, so you can add 2 to it or add a string to it or something like that, and then it'll save the new array with that manipulation on that object. Filter allows you to remove things, basically, and reduce allows you to do math, so you can find the sum of an array of objects, if those objects are numbers, obviously, or the average or things like that, and it returns a single number instead of a brand new array like the first two. And at the end of all of that, we did a review, which was on Thursday, and we went over everything that we'd learned this week and called back to some of the things that we learned in our first week. And it was really nice, actually, to realize how much we had learned, how much information we'd gotten without even really realizing it, and seeing how everything worked together really well. So after that, on Friday, we started a brand new language. What? And it's Python. Apparently Python is supposed to be like the most user-friendly, beginner-friendly language to learn in, but the syntax is so different. It's a little bit messier than JavaScript. JavaScript's really good about kind of nesting things and blocking things out, but Python doesn't use nearly as many parentheses or brackets as JavaScript, which could be really confusing. And I'm really happy that we learned JavaScript first, because I feel like I was able to understand, nesting and hoisting and scope a lot better in JavaScript than I would have in Python if we'd started with it. But we just went over some basic stuff in Python, like syntax of Python, the functions, how to call functions. We went over a little bit of how to do loops and things like that. It's going to be a little difficult to keep the languages separate because there are a lot of differences, but all the differences are really small. So I think there's going to be a lot of confusion in the beginning of, is this Python syntax, is this JavaScript syntax, and things like that. But it'll come with time and with practice. But that's definitely one of the challenges that I've seen for myself this week, is understanding what is JavaScript and what is Python and making sure not to mix those up, basically. But I am super excited to learn a new language. Just like last week, I'm pumped for the next week coming up to really get into Python. We're off on Monday for Martin Luther King Day, rest in power Dr. King, and I'm probably going to use that day to study everything we learned in JavaScript to make sure that I don't lose any of that information. So it's been a really good first 2 weeks. And so far, I do like JavaScript a little bit better than I like Python, but obviously they can do different things and be implemented in different ways. So we'll see how Python works out in week 3. If you'd like, stick around for the little programming joke at the end. If not, as always, I will keep you guys updated.